Well, it's 5, which means. Oh, yeah, good. Medina, good. Liliana. Mackenzie, I see you back there, yeah. Rachel. Oh, there. Good. Olia. Carter. Blake. Nathaniel. You guys are like next to each other and alphabetic. Whoa. It's spooky. Dylan. Evelyn. Good. I don't see Eddie. And Medina is here online. Jewel. Austin. And Olivia, it's online too. Good. I'm glad you guys got hooked up there. Victor. Emma. Phuket. Lily. Raylan. And Grace is not here again.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Is she okay? Yeah, that was my question.
Yeah. Okay. Whatever being low or something.
Well. Okay, well. Well, I got stuff to talk about. And I'm gonna try this out. It worked at home. I have a subscription to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and I don't know how much you guys read the paper, but they have arts news in it all the time. And this one is about slam. What is slam? Don't you guys watch wrestling? Oh,
Like a body.
it's not, yeah, no, it's not that.
I don't know band, but not,
Yeah.
not quite.
Well, it stands for St. Louis Art Museum. SLAM. Anyway, just saying. And so I think this will work, even though I got the frowny face. I think I can still get there this way. I got to make sure I'm in the right share. Looks good. So, you guys at home can see this? I'll take that as a yes. So here it is. This is the story. Kind of clever. Bones of Contention. St. Louis museums reconsider displaying human remains. You know, I talked to you about this the other day, repatriation. And this is another issue that's like huge, and it's especially big when we're talking about ancient art and ancient cultures. And so look, this is what we got here. And so here we go. Mummies of the World exhibition had more than 125 mummies. Well, what is a mummy? A dead person, right? A corpse.
Pretty much not be preserved.
Preserved, yeah. Preserved and dead. And a real human being. And so this is an issue that's part of the discussion these days. And so inside a beautifully painted cartonnage, Amen Nestaway not has even been celebrated with birthday parties at the St. Louis Art Museum. And here she is. And so what they do a lot with these mummies is that they study them, and this is an X-ray of the mummified body. They do all kinds of stuff with mummies. For example, one of the things that happens a lot in this day and age is DNA testing. And they inspect the human remains and they try to find out how this person died, what kind of diseases they may have had, how was their nutrition, did the bones form properly, and so on. And so, but even these ancient remains have become part of the international discussion of the ethics of museum display. And so anyway, this is, and it's not just Egyptian, I might add. Over modeled skull uses a human skull covered with a clay mixture. We saw one of those from Jericho. Chapter 1. Clay, seashells. It was kind of not in quite as good as shape as this.
I mean, would you rather see that or see a decrepit, probably skinless face, like a skeleton, like their skeleton? I wouldn't want to see rotting skeleton. I wouldn't want to see that.
Well, that's true. I think that this is, you know, if we're talking Carter's idea of beauty, art, beauty, and it is one of the criteria. And I'm always going to go to Carter on this one because he brought it up. And it is an expectation. It is a criterion of what we expect art to be. And so this is not, would you say this was a thing of beauty, Carter?
Yes.
I would say that too. Yeah, I think this is fascinating. And so this is a lot newer. And in this case, you can see the seashells, they're still intact. And like I said, that's a very common practice. And so anyway, I just wanted to show you that. And let me see if I can get this as a share. Sharing is caring. That's what I tell my 8-year-old granddaughter. Slideshow from current slide. There we go. So anyway, before I get too far back into Mesopotamian art, I do have a few things I want to tie up here. I teach this, I have this same class, Art 100, Art History 100, excuse me, online. And one of the things, one of the characteristics, one of the requirements of that class is online discussion. You guys ever taken online classes? Yeah, that's kind of a staple, I think. And I really kind of enjoy reading what people put on the discussion posts. It's really pretty cool. I'll find out from you guys how you're thinking about this stuff through the quizzes, because I'll ask you to write about art. But bottom line is that a person just the other day made this observation that not everything that we study was intended to be art. What do you think about that? I just showed you that skull. Was that a religious, a customary practice in the culture, or was it, hey, let's make some art? In this, when we go back even this far, a lot of things that we find will be looked at as art that would have been, in many cases, just ordinary objects. And we'll find soon a lot of Greek pottery. And it's very beautiful. It's fascinating. It has wonderful decorations. It's wonderfully crafted. Sometimes it tells a story, much like I showed you with the Barca vase, how the story goes around and then you go up another level and you see it. Well, you know, their pottery is like that too. And you can kind of read the story or a story of Hercules, for example. Hercules vase, Hercules amphora, whatever. But those were actual household items too. We're not sure that they were originally intended to be art. Might have been just more functional than anything else. In the case of the skull, might have been a religious object. There's a lot of things. Anyway, what do you guys think about that? Is it art? Are you showing you the skull? And I took my slide off too early. Is it art? Art.
Yes. It's the most beautiful forest creature I've ever seen. It has the most magnificent ear.
Yeah. This we would accept as art. You know, there's another thing too. We would kind of divide art into three, for the sake of like this textbook, three basic categories: painting, sculpture, and architecture. And really, in a lot of ways, the architecture in a lot of respects is really kind of the greatest accomplishment. And most of the stuff like this are used to decorate the building, the architecture. It's part of the architecture. And in fact, and a lot of murals that we see, part of the architecture. In fact, they build in spaces with large flat walls that are intended for a painter to come in and create a scene. And so anyway, just saying, I don't remember if I said this. When we were here last week, I talked about the legs and stuff, but again, this is one of those examples of a human and a bull, and it's got wings, so it's probably a bird too. So this is like three different kinds of creatures all put together. But yeah, I would agree with Carter too. That's one of the most fascinating things about Mesopotamian art is that the braided beard, the jewelry, the crown, actually, in some ways, the naturalism, I use that word advisedly, the naturalism of the facial features. As I say, a lot of times with this art of this period, you feel as though you could probably know who is the subject of this sculpture, because it has individual characteristics. And so anyway, but that was what I wanted to say about that. And I told you about Ashurbanipal and great Assyrian king. Bottom line, I wanted to show you this. And why am I showing you this? Well, I learned stuff all the time too. And one of the things that I try to do is go through some of the more current stories about recent finds and things. And like I say, because Google is listening to me right now, I'll get more after this class, you know, but anyway, but I subscribe to stuff like that. This is a very famous painting. I've known about it for 30 years, 40 years, ever since I studied art history, like you guys. And the artist's name is Eugene Delacroix, and it's called The Death of Sardanapalus. It comes from a time known as Romanticism, early 19th century. There's all different kinds of forms of Romanticism, and it was kind of an aesthetic in literature and in painting and sculpture. Romanticism. Well, it doesn't look like very romantic to me. Romanticism is used in a different way. Like a lot of these art terms, it's used in a different way than what you would commonly use. Romantic. I ought to be still. She's so beautiful. Not so. This is more about trying to kind of elicit an emotional response. And that's what Romanticism does. It tries to play to your heartstrings. And whether or not it's something grandiose and beautiful, or something, in this case, very deeply disturbing. Because the story of this is that the enemy has breached the walls, and here is the king. And rather than letting the enemy get his treasure, they're more or less kind of destroying everything, including the harem. See, like this guy is in the process of slitting her throat. She's dead over here. They're killing the horses. Chaos. You see a knife. Somebody getting cut up here. And so I've known about this. I've known about Romanticism. I did not know that Sardanapalus was the Greek name for Ashurbanipal. Whoa. So anyway, I brought it in, and in part because, see, a lot of these ideas that they feed on themselves too. You know, you'll see things that, like, say, for instance, might have happened in history, the death of Julius Caesar, and it spawned Shakespeare's play, Julius Caesar. And you'll see a lot of statues and a lot of paintings glorifying the great Caesar or portraying him in death. And so all of these messages that I'm talking about, how you're supposed to read it. What is the equivalent in this day and age? Because I think we've seen enough stuff and we know enough about what it means. What is the equivalent in today's world? All of this art, you got to kind of go back 3,000-4,000 years and say, well, you know, this is what they had. This is what they wanted to portray, and this is what was important to them. So this is a painting. Actually, it's real big too. One of the things that Delacroix did was paint giant paintings, and this is in the Louvre, by the way, too. It's like huge. What is today's equivalent to something like this? Not talking. Carter,
Replication.
I think so, and I'll even build on that. A lot of art in its day functioned in the same way that movies and media function today. And so, like I said, this is like a huge painting. This was 19th century IMAX. It was huge. You would stand there and look at it, or you could just sit there and take it in all day. It was the best they had. They didn't have motion pictures, they didn't have sound. But media kind of conveys a lot of the same messages as did art. And don't believe me, just go on the internet and you want to talk about just about anything. Religion, these are very much religion. You want to talk about politics and power and money and wealth, it's all there. And so Ashurbanipal wants to tell you that he's a great king and a great lion hunter, and he's very powerful and wealthy, and don't mess with him. This is what you got. Now, what would you have? Terminator, something, you know, just say it. And so this was actually what? Ishtar Gate. And I need your help with this. So please. Last summer, an action movie came out, superheroes, and it was about a superhero that went back in time. You guys, I couldn't find it online. I tried to do descriptors and things, but it happened right when we were in this class, the same class last year.
Doctor Strange is more voice. Yeah,
That was like a few months ago.
but that was only a couple months ago.
Yeah, no, this was last year.
Yeah, and Spider-Man was gonna be, it was gonna be different years, but sure, I think he didn't go.
Yeah, no.
At any rate,
Yeah.
they built a model of this on the movie set. And I had some pictures of them putting this movie together. And they used Ishtar Gate as a way that would signify that the superhero had gone back in time. And this is like symbolic of something almost 3,000 years old, 2,700 years old. And it was found by a German. Well, you guys got it?
Isn't it Eternals? Yeah.
Yes, yes, Eternals,
I
yeah.
didn't watch that movie.
You'll see this in that movie.
It was like Eternals.
Yeah. Eternal now, yeah. Hey. How about this? Let's see. Let's see, I'm trying to get, oh, I can move this down here. New tab. Oh. I'll learn how to type. Eternals, like I said, last year. Let's see, images.
You might have to look it up.
Yeah, I might, yeah, you're right, I'll need some more.
Yeah, you can just click the first thing.
It's okay.
Yeah. There it is.
What do you know?
Ah, click too much.
I'd say a lot of trouble.
I'm telling you.
Now, I don't have to use like CGI to make all these backgrounds.
Oh, yeah.
They can like actually travel to a place and not only does it look badass, but it
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. And
I think there would be a huge difference if it was CGI or compared to.
Yeah, but they go to that kind of effort.
And so anyway, you can see just a tiny bit of it behind the red arrow, but yeah, thanks, Scott. Anyway, making ancient art history relevant in today's.
Use it as a difference.
Yeah, well, you know, kind of in its own way, a lot of this stuff, you guys are college students, and you may or may not be an artist. This might be part of your general education practice, general package. But bottom line is that this is kind of stuff that's a lot of people know, just straight across the board. And so anyway, the people putting the movie together go, we'll put Ishtar Gate in this. It's well known. We can identify it. We can put it in the movie. And so, yeah, I had a story about that at one time about how they were doing that. They actually made a life size model of it with plywood and stuff. And let's see, let's open this up. And Olivia, you still with us?
Yep, I'm still here.
Okay, good. Yeah, I gotta get this back on track because I was goofing off.
No, you're good. I just can't see the shared screen anymore. That's it.
Right, yeah, that's what I gotta get restore. Share screen. And let's do that. Got it now?
Yeah, I think it's just loading. It says that you've started sharing your screen, so it'll load in here in a second.
All right. So, you got it?
It's still loading. Let me see if I'm in my basement, so It was working a second ago, but let me see if I can go upstairs. Might work a little better.
Well, yeah, that's another thing about doing Zoom. You need that broadband bandwidth. It's kind of data rich, as they say. So where we go from Mesopotamia, we're moving over to Egypt. And that is in Northeast Africa. It's the northeast corner of, excuse me, the African continent. It's still loading for Medea too. You guys let me know when you get it, all right? But it's on the upper northeast corner. And you can see all of this is everything here is along the Nile River. The Nile River was the source for everything. Transportation, agriculture, was a place where you could build cities and so they did. They did that in a pretty major sort of way. Now, this is, oh, right, Medina, good. So anyway, there are different eras, different kingdoms in the history of Egypt. But I got one question I want to start you with. This is Upper Egypt. That's Lower Egypt. Right?
That doesn't make any sense. Wait.
Do I have the map upside down?
Oh, no, we nine. Okay, yes, that, what?
I know why.
Do tell.
Because the Nile River flows backwards, so it's the upper part of the river and the.
It's
lower
one
part
of the few rivers, and you're absolutely right. It's one of the few rivers in the whole world that flows northward.
Instead of southern.
Yeah, or east and west like the Amazon, but like the Mississippi comes from the north down to the Gulf of Mexico. That's typically the way, and so that's why this is upper. This is, then you would say this was upriver and downriver, using some St. Louis language. And so anyway, there's another thing here too, and they have some little bit here. This Egypt has a profound impact, influence on modern day life. And before I get into that too much, this is a new kingdom, which is like up to 1500 to about 1000 BCE. So it's like the kind of the last big hurrah, although Egypt still maintains its identity. Even after the new kingdom, what happens is that from the north up here in the 4th century BCE, Alexander the Great comes through and he conquers Egypt and the Middle East and goes all the way over to South Asia. But at any rate, see that town right there, Alexandria, founded by Alexander the Great. That's who it's named after. And so there's some other recognizable things. Memphis, not Tennessee, Memphis, Egypt. That's, and in America, this is another thing about my other class, they have a map assignment. We try to get them to make maps like this, but they always have to be very, very careful because much of North America and South America, but especially in the United States,
we name a lot of places after ancient places. You can go right up the road here, just north of Wentzville, is Troy. Just saying. So anyway,
Judgment of Hunterford. Book of the Dead from the tomb of Hunterford in Thebes. And where is Thebes? Not even on the map. Anyway, the Egyptians were very prolific in what they did. They made monumental buildings, they made monumental sculpture, and they told stories. And they really developed their writing ability and their ability to tell stories. And this is from the Book of the Dead. And this is about the Book of the Dead, right? And what this portrays is that in Egyptian religion, when a pharaoh would die, he was expected to go live with the sun god. But the pharaoh had to pass a series of tests to make sure that he was worthy of going to be with the sun god. And so in this case, what they did was take his heart. That's it right there. And this is a feather. And you can see the feather actually weighs a little bit more than the heart. See it? That meant that he was pure of heart, that he had passed this test. You know, it's not, in a lot of ways, not unlike a lot of religions where there's a gatekeeper to the afterlife, to heaven. Christianity, St. Peter, he's there, the gates of heaven. Were you bad or you good? Will I let you in? Or should I send you downstairs? Say. And so anyway, that's really what this is about. It's about what happens upon the death of a pharaoh. And I'm going to zoom in on this guy because it's like really cool. These guys. This figure is Anubis. And there are a lot of figures in Egyptian art that are, again, that hybrid. The head of a dog or a wolf and the body of a human. And this one here is basically still half something, but it's not half human. This guy is. And the Anubis would be the guardian of the tomb, Carter.
I think that one's half dog.
This is half dog. Yeah, half dog, and I'm not sure what this part is. Yes.
That one's Ahmed. It's crocodile and lion. It's the goddess. I think it's a goddess.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it is. It is a crocodile and a lion. And I'm still baffled by the hind legs.
Yeah, it's something. I can't remember what the bottom.
So you know about this stuff. That is pretty cool.
And so people, boats, and animals, a watercolor copy from the painting of Tomb 100. And so this is what would happen. When invaders came into Egypt, And before photography, you couldn't really take down a wall, but they wanted to memorialize what they were finding, and so they bring artists along and draw pictures or do watercolors of what they found, sort of documenting Egyptian culture. And so here we go. The palette of Narmer. And you see it's like 2 feet 1 inch, so it's 25 inches. That. It's slate, which is a black stone, kind of hard, kind of heavy. And this is Narmer. And we believe that Narmer he has someone who is vanquished here. As I said, these kings like to show that they're powerful. They like to show that they beat their enemies in battle. It's not unusual to see them about ready to clobber or shoot an arrow or something to their enemies. And so this is King Narmer. It's from the old kingdom, 3,000 years, 3,200 years old. And this is the reverse or the front. Yeah, the other one's back, sorry. But we have these figures that are lions, but they have these elongated necks, and we're not sure what that's all about. But we do know what the whole thing is about, and that carve out in the middle. It says a palette. Anybody know what a palette is? Yes. A makeup palette, absolutely. Harder.
What about the pellets that we have in our factory? Are we use that like hold like products and stuff on them? Like heavy boxes?
Oh, no, that's a different kind of palette. It's makeup, and it's more like a palette. Or it was used for makeup, but like if you're a painter, you have this object, this flat, sometimes oval shaped thing, and you mix your paint on it, and it's called a palette. And so, yeah, that's what this is. And so anyway, burial tombs, very elaborate. Saqqara, this is one of the older pyramids. It predates the pyramids at Giza. And one of the things here at Saqqara is that this place, they're finding all kinds of stuff by this pyramid. And see, here is what we think it looked like 3,000 years ago. The step pyramid, basic architecture. The North Palace, entrance hall. All of this, we think, existed there, kind of based on what we know, based on what we found. And so, mortuary precinct of Dozier, Saqqara, Egypt. So I'm going to show you this. Let's go back to Saqqara see, it's just south of Giza, where the famous pyramids are from. And Saqqara, I think I want to do something here. And I want to find it here, and a module. How many of you get Netflix? Oh, good. I wanted to show you this before it got too late. And let me make sure that I got your screen share for our contestants playing the game at home. And it looks like we got it on the share, so we're good. Olivia, I got a little hand on by your name.
Oh, I just raised my hand because you asked you had Netflix, so I pressed the little raise hand button.
Ah, good. All right, you got it. This is on Netflix right now. Netflix documentary, Secrets of the Saqqara Tomb. And here you see that step pyramid. And like I say, all around it, Saqqara was like undiscovered for a long time. Most of the discoveries of the 20th century centered around Giza, the Valley of the Kings, and all kinds of stuff. We're finding a lot of things at Saqqara, and that's what this film is about. After unearthing a tomb that had been untouched for 4,400 years, Egyptian archaeologists attempt to decipher the history of the extraordinary find. And I'd recommend it. I don't think it's well, it's 2 hours long, hour 54. Why am I promoting this? This is an excellent film to show how they excavate in Egypt. And they have a lot of heavy hitters from the Egyptian Department of Antiquities. They have actually high government officials that actually oversee any excavation. And for good reason. For good reason, because in centuries past, they've been ripped off. I mean, Napoleon came in. I'm going to talk about that in a little while too, maybe. But Napoleon came in the early 19th century, and they basically took everything that wasn't nailed down. I mean, really, quite literally. And that's why you'll see a lot of Egyptian artifacts in the Louvre. And then the British took over and colonized Egypt until 1956. It was a British mandate. And they took a lot of stuff from Egypt. And in fact, it wasn't until the 1950s that Egypt shake colonialism, as did much of Africa in the 50s and 60s. So anyway, you'll see this is like so complex, and in part it's complex because they have a specific timetable. This is kind of an aside, but I thought it was real interesting. The excavation started like 7 or 8 weeks before Ramadan. And at Ramadan, you don't do any work. It's holy time. And so they're trying to get this done in time because they'll lose all their workers. They won't come in and this holy season. And so anyway, they do a lot of digging, and they show you some of the research that goes into the things they excavate. They find a mummy that they don't know what it is, so they take it to the laboratory and they x-ray it, and they find out that it is a mummy of a cat. And nobody had ever seen mummy of a cat, but it was buried inside the tomb, and inside that tomb it belonged to somebody who was a holy person, sort of the royal, we would call him in today's terms like the archbishop bishop or something, you know. And so anyway, and bragging rights. The person who is directing the X-ray study of the cat, and she shows up at various points in this film, is Dr. Salima Ikram. And she is a friend of mine. In fact, I've met her a few times. And she came to lecture at Truman State when I taught there, and my friend is an Egyptologist, and she'd bring her over and they get to have dinner and do lectures and stuff. But she's really cool, and she's in this movie. And in fact, I see her in a lot of these films because she's like one of the top Egyptologists, University of Cairo. Anyway, so it's 5:52. I wanted to do this before we go. I'll talk more about Egypt when we get back. It's a lot of things to say. This is what I want to finish on. And I gotta make sure I can see this at home. Yeah, we're good. And so this is the quiz. It's on the assignments link. Says there are 2 images on the screen. Write an essay, no more than 2 pages, on one of the artworks. And so this is the first one. This is the second. Choose one to write your essay on. In your essay, answer the following questions. Attribution, what is it? And that is kind of why I brought up that idea of religion and object and have maybe another purpose, but is art too? That's kind of what I want you to get at, you know. It's beautiful. Yes, sir.
But didn't you include the picture of the bearded men, the bearded horsemen?
Oh,
What do you have said about that?
yeah. Yeah, just didn't think of it. Yeah, I wanted to kind of narrow it down to 2 choices, and as we go along, I'll probably be giving you greater range of choices where you're going to be picking your own stuff. But I wanted to kind of focus in on a couple of things, A, that I knew you'd be able to find information on, and B, something that we spent some time on here in class. And so, what is it? Where was it found? What was it made of? And so those are all, that's all what you'd say placard information. If you were to go to a museum and see this, this is what would be on it. Title. And in today's world, you get artist, title, media. But in this day and age, we don't know who the artists were. The idea of an artist actually being somebody we know or could identify, that's a much more modern concept. And in fact, you wouldn't know who made this stuff any more than you would know who put the drywall in this building. You know, it was just kind of seen as a skilled trade under the direction of the king, the powerful, the religious authorities, and so on. So anyway, yeah, that's what I want to find, and really kind of elaborate on what it is made of. Don't just copy it. Tell me what it really is. And so the bearded winged bull What is that made out of? Granite? I think. If we were doing that one, tell me what granite is. And, you know, we talked about a lot of that kind of stuff in here as we've been going along. You know, is it a hard stone? Is it soft? What is it? Maybe on the Mohs scale? What is this blue stuff?
Lapis.
You're giving away my answers. Yeah, it's lapis lazuli. So, yeah, no, you're good. But that, yeah, that's, and then tell me what lapis lazuli is. Not just what it's made of, but what is the nature of the material? And so the second question I want you to answer, describe the degree of naturalism.
What is that?
That's what I'm going to tell you. On the scale, everything is on a spectrum of some sort, but naturalism means, in this case, lifelike. And so I thought about putting a cave painting in there, but I'm not sure if you can answer some of the other questions. But some of those cave paintings are very naturalistic. You could identify what kind of horse is painted on the wall, or what kind of bull, what kind of bison, whatever. So the degree of naturalism, you can almost replace that with realism. But realism is kind of a loaded term too. Why would realism be loaded? That's kind of one of the reasons I didn't go with the bull, the winged bull with the human head and beautiful mirror. How do you do that? It looks kind of natural. It looks like it probably could live and bite you if you get too close. But it's fantasy too. So that's where we start to split hairs. But tell me about the degree of naturalism. And I'll give you a hint. There is somewhat of a difference here. One is a little bit more stylized. One of them is a little more natural. But talk about that. The size, the symbolism. We talked about a lot of this stuff in here, and even with the placement of this guy that we talked about, or how to read this, the registers on this base, and placement and other visual characteristics, iconography, symbolism. I didn't write symbolism, but yeah, I did. There it is. Bottom line, that's the kind of stuff I want you to tell me about. And final question, why is this artifact important, and what does it reveal about the culture of its creation? Use online sources to support your answer. So I want 2 pages maximum. Submit it as a docx or a PDF. And I got here this. And it's available to you. And this is an example. There it is. Let's get our shares in order. Yeah, we got it. Good. So this is the answer.
It's Venus of Wellendorf, and I had the picture, but this is the paper that was turned in. The depictive image is of Venus of Wellendorf. Limestone rock carved circa 28,000 years BCE, tinted with the red ochre pigment, excuse me. And so when I was talking about tell me what it is, you could add a sentence onto that and say, what is limestone? Sedimentary rock. Limestone's basically made of dead seashells. It's the calcium. Yes.
Thought it was made of limes. Trade.
Well, lime, that's what lime is. And they got lime like vast areas of lime where there were a lot of sea creatures that died and they got packed down. There's a place in St. Genevieve called Mississippi Lime Company. And it's right there on the Mississippi River from prehistoric times, from 1 million or 2 million years ago. And so the fossils, they just made of calcium and basically lime. So look that up and tell me just a little bit about it. It's sedimentary rock and it's pretty soft. And so what is red ochre? Red ochre. You ever see red ochre movies? You know, he was a cowboy and he had a sidekick and they'd go out and chase the bad guy. Red ochre. Oh, heck, you crazy. Red ochre is just an earth pigment. It's just dirt, but it's a dirt that's colored red and you use it for paint. And that was used in cave paintings, by the way. A lot of those bulls and horses and stuff painted with red ochre. And so anyway, Paleolithic statue made elsewhere and brought to Willendorf, Austria. And that is kind of an interesting idea because as we talked about, people were largely nomadic during this time and they moved and they followed the wild animals. They moved because of the winter weather and so on. But anyway, it says the figurine is of a standing obese woman with no emphasis on the arms and feet, with more focus being paid to the shape of the figure itself. Her small and nearly indistinguishable hands rest on her massive breast, and what appears to be a cap, braid, or basket covers the head and face. See, this is formal analysis. You're describing this. The student was describing Venus of Wellendorf, and this is really what I want you guys to do with one of the two. And so we're talking about the exaggeration here, and this goes to the naturalism because it's Venus of Wellendorf is not that naturalistic. In fact, it's more symbolic than anything else, and because it is exaggerated with large breasts, big hips, as it says here, not much arms. And so with such emphasis on female figure and body parts and lack of physical details to connect to a specific person, that's another aspect of it's not a high degree of naturalism. But I showed you a lot of stuff from Mesopotamia, and I think some of those figures, some of those faces, you could probably recognize them if we knew that. It's much more naturalistic. And so Venus is seen as a goddess of love and fertility. Now, one thing that really didn't get covered here, and you would find this if you would research it. See, this is kind of a good example, but it's kind of missing a few things too. But Venus of Wellendorf. Guess who named that? The guys who discovered it. Is this a real Venus? No. Yes, I already forgot to look at what you got to tell me. Evelyn, yes. Why?
This is like religion. Stuff like that.
Absolutely.
It's not related to.
Yeah, it's out of mythology that will come along thousands of years later. Yeah, that's exactly the point. And so the archaeologists named it Venus, but that is, as you said, it's a misnomer. It's not a very accurate thing. And even with the purpose, Venus wasn't in mythology. Greco-Roman mythology wasn't really about fertility as much either. She was about beauty and love, but not making baby. And so anyway, but you can see here, there's a lot that's written here. Much of this is pretty good. There's some more meat that could be put on these bones, so to speak. But I don't want you to go over 2 pages. And so you see, this is like 1 page. And so at the end of your essay, I want you to do this. Put your sources, list your sources. And in this class, almost always, you're going to need this as your first source. That's the textbook in bibliographic form. Author, title, the edition number, ISBN number. That's good enough. And you can see here 2 sources that are websites. And for right now, you can do it just like this. It's not going to be points taken. This is where we're going to start. And as we progress through this semester, I'm going to be adding more criteria. And so this hot link is not particularly accurate in bibliographic form, but I want to see where you're getting your information. That's all I really need to know right now. I want to see how well you can describe work and its characteristics and describe the materials it's made of. And that is kind of why I chose these other ones over the cave paintings. And I didn't think we'd get deep enough into Egypt to throw one of those. And so let's see. And so there is the picture, and you can see the red ochre on it. And here it is. It's available right now. And it's available until September 10th. And where did I get this? Oh, and it's due September 7th. And so September 7th is Wednesday, next Wednesday, when we come back, and it'll be due at 11:59. So if you have this mostly done and we come in and you got questions, I'd be happy to answer them before they're due. The idea that it would stay open another 3 days is for people who have the need for extra time. And if you don't have that accommodation, but you don't have it in, I'll take off some late points, but you could turn it in late too. But that's the reason it has a different date for when it's due and how long it is open. File upload. And so, like in that example, I didn't need the picture. I got the picture here. The artist started off by writing what it was as the title, Venus of Wellington, and then proceeded to write about it. And so questions? Yes.
So I'm a little bit confused about, the whole concept of naturalism.
Yeah.
What that's referring to, whether it's the context of what the item is, or if it's physically.
That's a very good question, and like I said, all of this stuff is on a spectrum. And extremely naturalistic would look like a photograph, very much crude in nature, if you will. And then you get stuff on the other end that would be totally abstract, even to the point of not being recognized. And so when I say the naturalism, it'll be a degree. And so give you guys some points here. This is reasonably natural, would you say? You can tell they're soldiers, but in a lot of ways, it's not natural, because look at the way their feet are, and they almost look like cartoon characters. And so that's where they are. It's not all the way like a photograph, and it's not so abstract that you wouldn't know what it is. So kind of describe where it fits. And I give you this word too, you can use this, stylized. Is it kind of exaggerated for a purpose? And so these guys are really stylized. They kind of have, they're kind of the same way. The heads are real big. The feet, you don't see actually any indication of the body under the clothing, which is what you'd see in something that was highly naturalistic. And so I would give you on one end the death of Sardanapalus as being highly naturalistic. The painting that I showed. And this, it's kind of black. It's kind of symbolic. But you know what it is, so it's got some naturalism about it. And I think you could use the same criteria to talk about this, and this is really pretty different. And I'll ask you guys, which is more naturalistic, this or this? Carter,
Last one.
this
It's
one.
like a shelf of books.
Yeah, absolutely. So that cleared it up for you? It's Labor Day. We won't meet on Monday. I know you guys said. Can we come in anyway? I won't be here, so just go have fun, okay?
I will run around.
All right. So thank you very much. You guys at home? Olivia, Medina, you guys good?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Name.
Yeah, and they're in the book, but I'll give you another. This is actually, yeah, see, you got a hockey game anytime soon?
I think it's
Yeah,
like
it was
maybe
the
over
other
is when we start.
Okay, I thought it was kind of early.
It's like every day basically.
Yeah.
It's like.
Well, let me know, because I'd like to watch you guys play.
If we're around zero,
Yeah, you bet. Good.
Yeah.
So Jewel, I wanted to tell you this one here, this is actually the same piece. This is the front and back. So don't get too confused that way. And this is in the, but that's in the book. And so is this.
Thank you.
You're
Look at that.
Have a good day.
All right.